The Deep Dive podcast is brought to you by X9 Intelligence, LLC. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and visit our blogs at x9intel.com. Okay, are you ready to have your mind blown? We're diving into the world of artificial wombs. This technology is going from science fiction to reality.
Yeah, it is incredible to think that we're like on the cusp of growing babies outside the human body. I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie, but the research is like advancing so rapidly.
Right, and it's not just theoretical anymore. We have footage of this futuristic facility called EctoLife. It's filled with rows of these AI-powered artificial wombs. And it's a glimpse into a potential future that's both exciting and a little unnerving right now. We also have sources suggesting that human trials for artificial wombs are on the verge of approval, and there's a team in Toronto already experimenting with a biobag that successfully housed a pig fetus. So in this deep dive, let's unpack the science, the potential benefits, and of course the ethical considerations that come with this game-changing technology.
It is a lot to unpack, but let's start with the basics. What exactly is an artificial womb, and how does it work?
Let's break that down. I mean, is it just a high-tech incubator, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more complex than an incubator, though there are some similarities. Essentially, an artificial womb aims to replicate the environment of a mother's uterus as closely as possible. It's about creating a space where a fetus can receive oxygen and nutrients, have its waste removed, and be protected from infections, all while continuing to develop just as it would inside a human body.
So it's like a self-contained life support system for a developing fetus.
Exactly. And that's where this biobag technology comes in. Researchers in Toronto have successfully transferred a pig fetus into this biobag, which is basically a clear, fluid-filled container that connects to all the necessary systems: oxygen supply, waste removal, temperature control, all of that. It's designed to provide the ideal environment for the fetus to thrive outside a natural womb.
Wow, that's incredible. If they can do it with pig fetuses, it's not hard to imagine this technology being used for humans in the not-too-distant future.
And that's precisely what researchers are working towards. Our sources indicate that the FDA might be close to approving human clinical trials for artificial wombs. The initial focus seems to be on using this technology to help premature babies, giving them a better chance at survival and healthy development.
That makes a lot of sense. Imagine being able to provide those tiny, fragile babies with a more natural environment to continue developing outside the womb. It could be a real game changer in neonatal care.
Absolutely. Current incubators, while life-saving, don't fully replicate the conditions of a womb. Artificial wombs, on the other hand, could potentially mimic those conditions much more closely, reducing the risk of complications and long-term health problems often associated with prematurity.
So while the idea of an artificial womb might sound futuristic, it's actually rooted in a very real and pressing need in the medical world. It's about bridging the gap between the womb and the outside world for those babies who need a little extra help.
Exactly. And then we have this EctoLife facility concept, which takes the idea of artificial wombs and pushes it beyond the purely medical realm, envisioning a future where babies could be gestated entirely outside the human body.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. You're talking about this facility with hundreds of artificial wombs, all managed and monitored by AI, right? What exactly would that look like?
Think of it as a highly specialized, technologically advanced facility dedicated to growing babies. The EctoLife concept video shows rows upon rows of these sleek, pod-like wombs, each one connected to a sophisticated AI system that monitors and regulates everything, from temperature and nutrient levels to fetal heartbeat and development.
It's both fascinating and a little unsettling to imagine, right? I mean, it looks incredibly high-tech and efficient, but it also raises all sorts of questions about the ethics and potential implications of creating life in this way.
It definitely does. And one of the most thought-provoking aspects of this EctoLife concept is the idea of designer babies. They propose an elite package that would allow parents to select and even manipulate certain genetic traits before implantation in the artificial womb.
Hold on. Designer babies. So you're telling me that parents could potentially choose their child's eye color, height, maybe even intelligence levels. Isn't that crossing a line?
It's a very controversial topic for sure. The idea of genetically engineering children raises profound ethical questions about what it means to be human, the potential for genetic discrimination, and the widening of social inequalities.
It's like we're stepping into a whole new era of human evolution where technology gives us the power to design our offspring.
Yeah.
But what happens to those who aren't designed? How will non-designed children compete in a world where some individuals have been genetically enhanced from the start?
That's a crucial question, and one that we need to grapple with as this technology advances. It raises concerns about a potential two-tiered society where those with access to genetic enhancements have an advantage over those who don't. It also begs the question, where do we draw the line? If we can select for intelligence and physical attributes, what other traits might become targets for genetic manipulation?
It's a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all happening so fast.
It is. But even if we set aside the ethical considerations for a moment, there's still the question of whether this level of genetic control is even scientifically feasible or desirable.
Right. And let's not forget, this technology is still in its early stages. Who knows what unintended consequences might arise from tinkering with human genetics in this way?
It's uncharted territory. And we need to proceed with caution and a lot of thoughtful discussion. So we've got this incredible technology with the potential to save premature babies on one hand and the potential to create designer babies on the other. Plus, a whole host of ethical questions we haven't even begun to unpack. It's a lot to process. Where do we even begin to weigh the pros and cons of something like this?
Well, I think a good place to start is by looking at the full range of potential applications for artificial wombs, from the purely medical to the more speculative, and then diving into the potential benefits and drawbacks of each.
I agree. Let's start with the potential benefits. In addition to what we've already discussed regarding premature babies, artificial wombs could offer solutions for women facing infertility or those who are unable to carry a pregnancy to term due to medical reasons.
That's a really important point. It could give hope to individuals and couples who have struggled to conceive or carry a pregnancy.
Exactly. It could also provide a safe and controlled environment for fetal development, minimizing risks from exposure to toxins, infections, or even maternal stress. Imagine a world where we could protect developing fetuses from environmental hazards and ensure optimal conditions for their growth.
I can see how that would be appealing to some people, especially in today's world where we're increasingly aware of the impact of environmental factors on fetal development. It's almost like creating a perfect little bubble where the baby is protected from all harm.
That's the idea. But of course, there are also potential drawbacks to consider.
Okay, let's talk about those. What are some of the concerns?
Well, for starters, some people might argue that gestating a baby outside the human body could have psychological and emotional impacts on the child, potentially affecting the parent-child bond. We simply don't know enough yet about the long-term effects of being gestated in an artificial environment.
That's a valid concern. What does it mean for a child's development if they don't experience the physical and emotional connection of being inside their mother's womb? Does it alter our understanding of what it means to be a mother?
It's a complex question with no easy answers. And then, of course, there are concerns about the potential for this technology to be misused or abused.
Like, could governments or corporations use it to control reproduction or create genetically modified soldiers, for example? We're wading into some serious dystopian territory here.
Those are legitimate concerns, and that's why it's so crucial to have these conversations now before this technology becomes widely available. We need to establish ethical guidelines, consider the potential societal impacts, and involve a diverse range of voices in the decision-making process.
This feels like a major turning point in human history. The artificial womb is more than just a medical advancement. It's a potential game changer for humanity. But with any game changer, there are risks as well as rewards.
Absolutely. And understanding both is essential if we want to navigate this new frontier responsibly.
Well said. Okay, so we've touched on some of the potential pros and cons, but I want to delve deeper into the societal implications. How might artificial wombs change the way we think about family, reproduction, and even the very definition of life?
That's where things get even more interesting, and that's precisely what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. It's fascinating to consider how artificial wombs could reshape our understanding of family and reproduction. Like, imagine a world where biological parenthood is no longer limited by the traditional constraints of pregnancy and childbirth.
Yeah, it's like we're rewriting the rules of the game. So where do we even begin to unpack the potential societal impacts? What are some of the key areas where we might see the biggest changes?
Well, for starters, widespread adoption of artificial wombs could have a significant impact on population demographics. Countries facing population decline might see this technology as a way to boost birth rates. It could also impact workforce dynamics by potentially addressing labor shortages in certain sectors.
So it's not just about individual families. It could have implications for entire nations. That's pretty mind-boggling. But what about the impact on gender roles and traditional family structures?
That's another area ripe for change. If gestation is no longer solely the domain of women, it could lead to a more equitable division of labor and child-rearing, and challenge traditional notions of motherhood and fatherhood.
It's interesting to think about how this might play out in different cultures and societies. Will we see a shift towards more egalitarian parenting models? Or will there be pushback against these changes?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's likely that we'll see a mix of both progress and resistance as societies grapple with these new possibilities. And let's not forget the potential impact on women who choose to have children the natural way.
Right. Will they face pressure to use artificial wombs, especially if the technology becomes perceived as safer or more efficient? And what about the potential psychological impact on women who might feel like they're missing out on a crucial part of the motherhood experience?
Those are important questions to consider. It's crucial that women retain autonomy and choice in their reproductive decisions. Regardless of how technology evolves, we need to ensure that artificial wombs are seen as an option, not an expectation.
It seems like this technology could be both liberating and potentially coercive at the same time, depending on how it's implemented and how societal attitudes evolve.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have open and honest conversations about the potential benefits and drawbacks, the ethical considerations, and the long-term implications of this technology.
Absolutely. We need to approach this with careful consideration, not just from a scientific perspective, but also from a social, ethical, and even philosophical point of view.
I couldn't agree more. And it's not just about the parents. We also need to think about the potential impact on children born via artificial wombs.
Right. Will they be viewed differently by society? Will they face unique challenges or stigmas?
It's possible. We've seen throughout history that new technologies often come with a period of social adjustment and even prejudice. Think about the early days of in vitro fertilization, IVF, for example. There was a lot of fear and misinformation surrounding that technology.
And now IVF is a widely accepted and celebrated part of reproductive health care. So maybe the same thing will happen with artificial wombs. But it's important to be aware of the potential for societal bias and to proactively address those concerns.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the concept of designer babies. If we're already worried about potential stigmas surrounding children born via artificial wombs, imagine the complexities and potential prejudices that could arise if some of those children are also genetically engineered.
It's almost like we're creating a whole new category of human beings, those who are designed and those who weren't. It's a recipe for division and inequality.
It's a valid concern, and it highlights the importance of establishing clear ethical guidelines and regulations around genetic engineering. We need to ask ourselves, what are the acceptable limits of genetic manipulation, and who gets to decide?
It's a slippery slope, isn't it? Once we start down the path of designing our offspring, where do we stop? And what are the long-term consequences for humanity?
Those are questions that philosophers and ethicists will be debating for years to come. But they're questions we need to start addressing now, before this technology becomes so advanced that it's out of our control.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential impact on families, gender roles, societal attitudes, and even the very definition of what it means to be human. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the economic implications. Could artificial wombs disrupt the workforce?
It's certainly possible. As with any new technology, there's the potential for both job creation and job displacement.
Right. On the one hand, the development and implementation of artificial womb technology would likely create new jobs in fields like bioengineering, AI development, and specialized healthcare.
Exactly. But on the other hand, it could also disrupt existing industries, particularly those related to pregnancy and childbirth. Think about the potential impact on obstetricians, midwives, and doulas, for example.
And what about the childcare industry? If more babies are born via artificial wombs, will there be less demand for nannies and daycare providers? Or will new types of childcare services emerge, tailored specifically to the needs of children gestated in artificial environments?
It's hard to predict with certainty, but it's likely that we'll see a combination of both disruption and adaptation in the workforce. Some existing jobs may become obsolete, while others will evolve to meet the changing needs of society. And new jobs will emerge that we can't even imagine yet.
It's like we're on the cusp of another industrial revolution, one driven by advances in biotechnology and artificial intelligence. And just like with previous industrial revolutions, there will be winners and losers.
That's true. And it underscores the importance of preparing for these changes through education and training programs that equip people with the skills they need to thrive in a rapidly evolving job market.
It sounds like we're heading into a future where adaptability and lifelong learning will be more important than ever before.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another important consideration: access and affordability. Who will have access to this technology? Will it be available only to the wealthy, further exacerbating existing inequalities? Or will it become a standard part of healthcare, accessible to everyone?
That's a critical question. We need to ensure that access to this technology is equitable and doesn't create a two-tiered system where only the privileged can benefit from its advancements.
I agree. We've seen time and time again that technological advancements can either widen or narrow the gap between the haves and have-nots. It's up to us to ensure that artificial womb technology is used to create a more just and equitable society, not one that further entrenches existing disparities.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground in this segment, from population demographics and gender roles to economic impacts and ethical considerations. It's clear that artificial wombs have the potential to transform society in profound ways.
They do. And as this technology continues to evolve, we'll undoubtedly face even more complex questions and challenges. But by engaging in open and informed discussions, by considering diverse perspectives, and by prioritizing ethical considerations, we can navigate this new frontier responsibly.
Exactly. It's not about fearing the future or trying to hold back progress. It's about shaping the future we want, a future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
I couldn't agree more. And in the next segment, we'll delve even deeper into some of the philosophical and ethical dilemmas raised by artificial wombs.
We've talked about the potential societal and economic impacts of artificial wombs, but now I want to dive into something even deeper: the philosophical implications. How does this technology challenge our understanding of what it means to be human?
It really pushes us to examine some core beliefs we have about life and birth. For centuries, we've linked pregnancy with the female body, with the very essence of creating life. But artificial wombs kind of separate that biological act from the emotional and social aspects of parenthood.
So it's like we're redefining motherhood itself.
In a way, yeah. It challenges the idea that being a mother is solely defined by biological processes. With artificial wombs, you could become a parent without ever going through pregnancy. And that opens up a whole new set of questions about parental bonds, the nature versus nurture debate, and even the very definition of family.
It's almost like we're entering a new era of human evolution where technology lets us rewrite the rules of creation. But are we losing something essential about the human experience in the process?
That's the big question, isn't it? Some might argue that the core of the parent-child bond is about love, care, and nurturing, regardless of how a child is conceived or gestated. Others might feel that the biological connection, the shared experience of pregnancy, is irreplaceable.
It's a debate that goes to the very heart of what makes us human. And there's no easy answer. But it's a debate we need to have openly and honestly as we navigate this new frontier.
Absolutely. And it's not just about mothers either. Artificial wombs could change the role of fathers too. Imagine a world where men could experience gestation, blurring the lines between traditional gender roles and creating new family structures.
It's mind-blowing to think about the potential social changes this technology could bring. Same-sex couples having biological children together, single people becoming parents without needing a partner. It's a whole new world of possibilities.
It is, and it's important to remember that with every new possibility comes new challenges and ethical considerations.
Right. We've already touched on the potential for societal division and inequality if designer babies become a reality. But there are other ethical concerns too, right?
Definitely. What about the potential psychological impact on children who know they were gestated in an artificial environment? Will they feel different? Will they face discrimination? These are questions we need to consider.
And what about the potential for this technology to be abused? Could it be used to create genetically modified soldiers or to control populations? It's a bit unsettling to think about.
It is. And that's why it's crucial that we have these conversations now before this technology becomes so widespread that it's out of our control. We need to establish ethical guidelines, involve diverse voices in the decision-making process, and ensure that this technology is used for the betterment of humanity, not for harm.
It feels like we're standing at a crossroads in human history. The artificial womb has the potential to reshape our world in profound ways, both for good and for bad.
It's a powerful technology, and with great power comes great responsibility. It's up to us to use this technology wisely, ethically, and compassionately.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of artificial wombs, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to ponder?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the future isn't predetermined. It's something we create through the choices we make today. Artificial wombs present us with a set of complex challenges and opportunities, and it's up to us to engage in thoughtful, informed discussions and make decisions that align with our values and aspirations for the future of humanity.
That's a powerful message. And on that note, I want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this incredible journey. It's been a fascinating exploration of a technology that has the potential to change everything.
It has been a fascinating discussion, and I hope our listeners will continue to engage with these questions and contribute to the ongoing conversation about the future of artificial wombs.
And a huge thank you to X9 Intelligence LLC for sponsoring this episode of The Deep Dive. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and visit our blogs at x9intel.com. Until next time, keep diving deep.